Why is recorded in front of a live studio audience.
It makes it a nice plus one kind of like yes and
Mhm.
of it. So, but we should do yes, these three women, and then we'll find another one. The sisters are doing it for themselves. And then what was the royalty one?
Oh, the royalty one is Victoria, Albert,
That's right.
the Chinese guy, the Hong Kong guy, and whoever.
Jack the Ripper. The
Oh yeah,
with the doctor
Doc.
that they think might be. Yes.
It's only just one woman, but she's so, I mean, she's enough.
And we've had a nice balance of women thus far.
Yeah.
Not to say no more, but like,
Oh no. And Victoria can hold it down for all of us.
yes. So that'd be perfect.
She's plenty. She's more than every woman in the world.
Yeah. Should we do
I think that's not nothing. And that wasn't that when we were gonna do hair metal.
I think so. What was the song?
Oh God, there were so many. Dr. Feelgood.
Doctor, of course, yeah.
Um, and Every Rose Has Its Thorn,
I was just gonna say that one.
or Love Song. Love Song. I mean, but see, Love Song, I feel like we have to save for like when we do the Tudors because it starts with that great harpsichord.
I don't, which one's that? I don't
How
think
do
I
you
know.
not? Okay, you have to remember it because you didn't know it, and then I made you listen to it when I went to see this.
Oh,
And we're going to interview this
yes.
guy.
Yes,
It's
yes,
the
yes.
greatest power ballad of all time, and that says a lot for me who loves like all power ballads.
Right, that is correct. Okay, yes, the Tesla one. I did listen to that.
It's the greatest, like greatest hair metal, greatest metal ballad, greatest power ballad. Like, by the way, at some point when we do one of these, we have to do one that is just, it's not by artist, it's by the composer. We have to do one that is all Jim Steinman music. I don't know who it's going to be, but we're going to have Making Love Out of Nothing at All, Total Eclipse of the
Clips of
Heart.
the Heart. I was just gonna say,
I would do anything for love, but I won't do that.
there was some other song recently where I was like, he wrote that or had a co-writing credit on it.
Oh, it's got to be a Dion one. Like it's all coming back to me, maybe. Like
Oh,
that's a great one. Like, I mean, it's gonna be all like overly emotive. Like
Making Love Out of Nothing at All.
that's the greatest song.
Read 'em and Weep.
That's a
It's all
great one.
coming back to me now. Yeah.
Making Love Out of Nothing at All was on Instagram the other day on Air Supply's actual feed, and
Mm.
that song is so great. The lyrics are just so phenomenal. The beating of my heart is a drum and it's lost and it's looking for a rhythm like you.
There's another song that it was made on a compilation record in 1979. The record was called LA Radio. The song was called Shadows on the Freeway. Um, However, it appeared on the 1981 album Dead Ringer with a new title. It's a Meatloaf song. The new title is Nocturnal Pleasure,
I mean, yes.
which Ken Russell directed the video for. So, like, do you need anything else?
This is Why, with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling.
Yeah.
So,
It's so interesting you said that, like that this book and your other books feature photos from your collection and more often from other
mhm.
people's collections. Speaking in generalities, that you talked a little bit about your reason and your fascination with this, but the collectors you've worked with, do they go into the reason behind it? That they are so fascinated by this? And are there
Yeah.
eras that people collect in, or is it just mostly Victorian? Is that most
Oh,
people?
no, no, no. It's definitely
No.
not mostly because a lot of people are into tribal and stuff. But there is somewhat of a pattern that you generalized, and it's not true for everyone.
Hmm.
Um, Most people start off were collectors, and it was like maybe Barbie dolls or maybe baseball cards or stuff like that. So it all started relatively for lack of a better term, normal. And
Right.
then it graduated into, for the people that have eventually collected oddities, it was like insects, animal bones, and then it moves over to human osteology and then ritual and stuff. But an interesting thing, and I always try to do this in my book, and it's not like only great shakes to me, but because I did want it, but it wasn't that difficult to do, is I try to keep a good balance between, uh, and I'll use this terminology now. Hopefully, it's uh, acceptable male and female collectors. People would assume, oh, this is a very male-dominated, thing, and it's not.
Hmm.
Um,
Huh.
it is pretty equal, but their attitude towards collecting is very different. And Evan Michelson, who used to, do you remember the show Oddities?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Well, Evan was owner of Obscura, and Evan's been in almost every one of my books in some capacity. Evan said to me, she brought it up like this. She said, "Look, I believe that men, and I do find this true. She was right. They need to complete the collection, and I think that is a throwback from baseball cards and stuff like that. So they need a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it. I need a skull that's going to run the gamut from syphilis to to cancer to gunshot wounds they need it all, and it depend no matter what they're collecting, it's a thing about completing the thing, whereas women are very slow in their collecting, and they wait till the piece fits the collection. Oh, this works in the collection, and won't make that purchase until they feel, okay, this is expanding the collection. So I think their attitudes towards collecting as they got older changed. The impetus for them to collect is what they collect is probably a little bit closer, and that's just kind of um, you know uh an attraction to the macabre or mysticism, or to um uh death and funeral, funeria, uh old medical, a group that is different based on my experience. I did a book on it's called Killer Collections, and it's people that collect um murder memorabilia. And that group of collectors was different than the regular oddities collector. They definitely were, I could say, were a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yes, some of them, and it was two groups. One wanted to be very connected to the person who committed the crime and would visit them, the most famous, Manson, Ramirez, wherever, they would
Yeah.
go and visit them. And that's how they would get their collection. And then there was a group that didn't want to know anything didn't want to have any personal nothing to do with them. But unanimously, or mostly, when confronted with the term, well, don't you think this is exploitive to, collect items that are so heinous, or were involved in such a dark part of history? By and large, they would say it's a dark part of history, but it is history. And I can guarantee you, I know the names of all the victims where you don't know the names of any of the victims. You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
that was interesting, you know.
In the collecting of yours and of other people's, how much how much of the history goes along with it? Are you able to, do you have names? Because part of the things, like I always like it, walking through cemeteries, you're looking at headstones and you're studying the birth dates and death dates, and you're looking at the name, and sometimes it occurs to me this thing of like, when was the last time somebody read this? When was the last time somebody thought about this person's name and wondered about their life? Do you have that access to these things? You mentioned the child cards. Do you have the kid's name? And in some way, you're keeping their memory alive because maybe you're not related, but there's a connection there, and you are, you know, saying that person's name and remembering them in a certain way.
I have, once again, you asked me, you could cut me off because I'm very long-winded, but you bring up two things or three things on this. Yes, that's why captions to me, not, captions. This book was a lot of research. So when you read the research, you could see the imagery that's related to it, and the caption was there. In my other books, it's very less text and a lot more heavier captions. The captions are so important, or otherwise it's just a series of images. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's not what the book is. That's not what any of my books are about.
It's grief
And
porn in some way, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
It's like grief porn
Right.
almost. Yeah.
Right, yes. And but and I can give you an example where I think it works really well, and it's one of my favorite pieces, two of my favorite pieces in the book, in some of the books. One is and I'll tell you why the how this relates to your question. And yes, because there's a toy. You remember, we used to get those toys. I'm much older than you, but I think they were still around. You know those things where you would press the bottom like this, and like the guy would do a little flipping
Mm-hmm.
thing and stuff.
Hmm.
In one of my books, there's one of those, and it's a wood version. It's probably early 1900s, 1910, 1912. And it's like this little guy, and you can see that he's old, and it's cool. And there's a little piece of paper next to it. And it's in Morbid Curiosities. And you're like, well, at first glance, you'd be like, well, what is this doing in here? Then I tell you what's written on that piece of paper, and it says, I forget the person it's addressed to, but let's say it's Johnny. Dear Johnny, this was the last toy your mother played with before she died. So now the toy takes on a totally different realm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the his. Sometimes I can't give you the history of who they actually were or what they, but I can maybe give you the history of the piece and how it related into that person's life,
Mm.
Yes. So whenever I can do that, I can do that. Interestingly enough, human osteology, skulls, stuff like that, you don't need a history of where that came from. So,
Mhm.
and so many of those came out of medical schools and stuff like that. So, interestingly enough, many times if you do come across a human skull that has medical, and you'll know it's medical because it has the sagittal cut where the top is, set, you'll see a name written on the back, and you would think that that's the corpse's name or no, it's usually the medical student's name. You know what I mean? So, but you do try to get as much information. I've come across people who had some very grim skulls, and I'll tell you, you can. I'm not mentioning who it is and stuff, so it's fine.
Mhm.
But you
Yeah.
determine if it's in such bad taste. But it has a fascinating skull that has a bullet, a very kind of a large caliber bullet wound in the back, and it was a father whose child was so severely disabled that he shot the child in the back. You know what I mean? So, you know, um, that's the kind of history I can get. Sometimes I can get exact history. Um, but to let you know how important that is to me, I'll abbreviate a very quick story. I went to a garage sale, a estate sale, and if you guys go to them, you know how sometimes you'll walk in and you'll be like, "There's something here. I don't know what it is, but I know there's something cool here."
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So I walk into the first floor. Underneath this like coffee table, there's an oversized photo of all these policemen, maybe circa 1950s. Obviously, it's their ball or their thing. So I hold it. I go in the basement. Basement is filthy, not filthy, well, cluttered with all kinds of photography equipment, tons of photography equipment. And on the floor is all these discs. And these discs have 0 to 9 white porcelain discs. I'm walking around and so I go by the workbench, which sometimes either if it's a sometimes at the workbench, you'll find nudie pictures, or in this case, I opened it up and it's a shot of someone on a morgue table. And I could tell it's on a morgue table because he has a little triangle thing on his back. When they put you on the
Mm.
morgue, they have that
Mm-hmm.
little rubber piece. But it's 8 by 10. Nobody has 8 by 10. They're usually very
Right.
small, right? So I'm like, this is odd. Then I found one more that looked kind of weird, but I took it anyway. I go upstairs, so I only found two, but so I go upstairs to the lady. I go, I'd like to buy this portrait and these two photos. She says to me, "You want these?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, I have 3 boxes full of these. So I'm like, do you know who Luke Sante is? Luke Sante wrote this amazing book called Low Life. And Luke Sante during the Luke Sante is actually a woman now. I'm not sure what the name is, but
Hmm.
he did and during the research of the book Low Life, he was at the New York City police station, comes across a file cabinet under a set of stairs, opens up the file cabinet. There's all these incredible crime scene photographs from the 20s, 30s, and 40s. 2 drawers full. He says, can I use these for my book? Same kind of story. They go, you want these? He says, yeah. They go, we just dumped a barge full of these in the East River about a month ago. So he flips out. He actually did a book based on that called Crime Scene Detectives. It's either called that or the other title. If you're interested, I'll say. So I'm saying to myself, this is my Luke Sante moment. I've come across this amazing cachet of crime scene photos, right? Took me 3 months for them to acquiesce for me to go and see this collection. I go there to the people's home, not the people, the estate sale people, and there's these 3 giant cardboard boxes. There are crime scene photos in there from that era that are amazing, quote unquote
Wow.
amazing. And some are very grim. Some are, of beautiful women from the 50s that are like leaning over in a car who have been shot that you couldn't tell they were shot. They were amazing. I'm like this, but what it was, I turned over every photograph and the stamp wasn't there that had the date, the crime, the location, and everything. So I said, what's the deal with this? He was a crime scene reporter, photographer. And actually what those discs were, remember I told you there was those little white
Hmm.
discs all over the floor?
Mhm.
He's the guy that invented, instead of when you hold up your mugshot and they would put in those little things in the felt, he's the guy
Hmm.
that invented the thing like, okay, you turn, like you
Oh,
turn the thing.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah.
what these little discs were. So what he did is he struck his personal photograph of one for himself, but every crime scene photo he handed in, but they didn't have, only 1 or 2 had the thing that said, what, who it was, the date, the year, and something. So I was like, you know what? These this is a collection of really grim photos of people at their worst possible time. That's not really what I collect. And if I don't have the history of what happened,
Right.
it's like I'm a ghoul. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so I said, look, I'm willing to sit with the guy if he'll get, and he said, no, the family doesn't want to have anything to do with this. So I made them a very low offer. I just said it and they passed. Interestingly enough, a few years later, I'm doing the book Killer Collections. I go to this guy's house who has an amazing collection. He's called Stiff Vintage on Instagram. I tell him that story. He goes, I'm the guy that bought those photos.
Wow.
So,
It's
and,
amazing.
but it does, I'm not just rambling. It goes back to your thing. Yes, everything I put in the book, in terms of collectors, I, and I try to get as much history as I can. And it's no great shakes to me either. These collectors want to tell you. They
Mhm.
want to give you
Mm.
all as much background, because if they find somebody that's just as interested in these pieces
Right.
as they are, there was a guy, Calvin, who had an amazing piece. It was I can't remember the bird, but it was the bird, and it was what was left of the bird, a big bird in a box. And I'm so sorry that I can't remember the name of it. I said, Calvin, what's the story with this? And it's an amazing, fascinating story. It was on a ship. It was from a ship about in the, turn of the century, 18th to the 19th century. This bird flew onto the ship. This this mate or sailor found it, befriended it, and kept it. They found out that he had the bird on the ship. They were gonna make him walk the plank or string him up, because that bird brings bad luck to the ship.
Oh no.
So they were
Mm.
furious with him. So they killed the bird, and this is what was left of it. But I mean, it was like, oh, that's a fantastic,
Wow.
and it was
Yeah.
missing some of its like wings now. Not that the wings were there, but the skeletal remains. Once again, a long-winded answer. Yes, anytime I can give you
That's
as much, like when
fascinating.
I did the book Skulls, I was very worried about. It's like it's 220 pages of skulls. And I was like, look, I don't want this book to be, oh, a skull, another skull, another skull, another skull, another skull. So it was very important that they were shot differently and that there was history or something to be said about these skulls, or
Mhm.
otherwise it's a catalog. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
You know, and you know, it's interesting how to tie it back to Beyond the Veil is so much of this history of these things that made its way here comes from Victorian era. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, of
Yeah.
it's because
course.
of what happened to them, you know, that these things do exist. And both of us, you know, you live in Detroit, still East Coast enough, but the East Coast is, you know, because as everyone landed here, as they kept going west, they dumped everything, right?
Right, of
So by the
course.
time you got to California, there's a pretty funny line in an old Steve Martin movie where he's in LA and he's walking. I don't know if you guys know this line, maybe you do. He's walking with this girl and he's trying to impress her he's walking with her and he goes, some of these buildings are over 25 years old, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, that's kind of like, you know, how it's same thing with, you know, the East Coast is, you know, got a lot of antiques, you know,
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
because they weren't going to carry them any
Nope.
further, you know.
Yep.
So,
All the good stuff.
So one thing I just wanted to throw in there, you
yeah.
mentioned Low Life by Sante.
Hmm.
Lucy Sante is what you can find the book under now.
Oh, okay, great.
So if you go to Amazon, type her name in, that is where you'll find it.
You'll love
Um,
it.
it looks fascinating.
It does.
Yeah.
To wrap up, in your research and really digging deep into the Victorian
Hmm.
death culture or world, is there anything that you kind of came upon where you were just like, we really should bring this back, that this is such a great way to remember people or honor people, or just the process of mourning where you're like, these folks got it. They're right the first time.
You know, that's interesting. And it's a personal, not I don't mean it's personal, but it's for everyone that the culture of death now is, and it's encouraged. Once again, I don't speak for you know, for all of society, but
Hmm.
a lot of society is it's best to move on. You know what I mean? You know, the quicker you can move on, the healthier it is for you. Uh, also, like or they'll use the analogy, you know, Mary would have wanted you to be happy. Mary would have wanted you to, you know,
Hmm.
to keep going and stuff like that. So there is like or people say, okay, come on, it's time to get over it. You know, so society definitely has now put a thing where they determine how long your grieving period should be. Not that the Victorian era didn't, but they, you know, but it was much longer, first of all,
Hmm.
unless you were a man. If you were a man, you had to get over it a lot quicker
Yeah,
because you
get
had to
on
get
the
back to work.
arches. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, of course.
But, and and, you know, so yes, you know, I think you should be able to personally grieve for as long as you want. Um, but things did happen in the Victorian era where, like everything, for lack of a better term, you could say it got corrupted because grieving became a business. And so it was encouraged to grieve for as long as possible and to use all the accoutrement because a lot of people were making money off of that, you
Hmm.
know? So, um, it's still such a personal thing how long you want to grieve. The beauty of it or the aesthetics, yeah, that would be lovely. You know what I mean? If you could if you could bring that back. um uh so to answer your question, there's not one specific thing except I guess maybe the attitude of one should be able, you know, to grieve for as long as they like, and you shouldn't be ashamed to grieve. And there is there is the pomp and circumstance of mourning.
Hmm.
We all appreciate it for the hour and a half or the wake, and we love that reverence. And but we can't wait for it to end. Apparently, we all love it, and we think it's so beautiful. And you know, when we see military um, burials, you know, everyone's in awe and think that's great. But uh, it's the quicker we can move on, the better. So
Hmm.
I know I haven't answered it because I probably don't have an answer if you ask me specifically what, and it's one
No,
of the
that's
reasons,
wonderful.
but also it's one of the things that I kind of surround myself with that stuff all the time, whether I'm
Hmm.
grieving or not. So it's not
True.
really fair, because,
Yeah.
you know, uh, I
No,
haven't, and a lot of people that I deal with, we love it. I-
but no,
It,
that's a good, I mean, to just put out there like the slow down and like don't rush something if personally,
right.
if you're in mourning. But then in general, I think too, what you're saying is also is just don't immediately move past that person and what they did and get on to the next thing and move, but like remember them basically. It's the long and the
Yeah.
short of it is just take the time to remember them and honor what they accomplished.
Yeah.
Not to put words in your mouth, but
No, 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 absolutely. You know,
yeah.
and not to use social media as the demon of everything, but there's so
Mm.
much more stuff to look at and move on from.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that, like, and you could look at somebody else's death, oh, there'll be somebody else rolling across my feed that died,
Right.
that,
Yeah.
is getting more views than when I put my grandmother up. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Beyond the Veil, The Victorian Obsession with Death and Mourning by Paul Gambino is available right now wherever you get your books. And for more information, you can find Paul online where he is at collectingthemacabre.com.
Nigel, is that you? Are you here, Nigel?